Hello and welcome to Fresh Perspectives. My name is Gail, and my guest today is a lady named Cara Seekings. She is an RN. What is an MS?
I have a master's degree.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I have 3, but I have a master's degree. I couldn't decide.
An RM.
I'm a registered metaphysician.
Oh, okay. Her 4 decades of employment in human services, nursing, health psychology, and thanatology have nurtured many interests and experiences, particularly in complementary therapies. She is a certified hypnotherapist, practical and power Reiki instructor, herbalist, aromatherapist, color energy therapist, and in retirement, owner of Herbal Restoration. She has authored 2 books. The names of them are Ladies of Lilydale and 11th Century Irish Cookery. Okay, now probably a lot of people in the viewing audience don't know what thanatology is.
Thanatology, Gail, is the art and science of therapeutic dying.
Therapeutic dying?
What it essentially does is embody the fact that it is someone's dying. It's not about me. Mm-hmm. It's not about what I know might be the right or the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. It's about honoring their wishes. Now, this doesn't promote euthanasia, but it does say that if I'm your thanatologist and you say, I've had enough, Cara, I want things to stop. My job then is to help you arrange for treatments to stop, arrange for comfort care, arrange for that kind of thing. Rather than to dictate to you, Gail, this is how it will have to be. It doesn't have to be.
Okay, so this is kind of like hospice.
Very much, actually. I was part of hospice for a number of years. I remind people regularly, let's promote hospice a bit. Hospice is not a way to die. Hospice is a plan to live until you die.
Right.
Whether it be 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, 20 years, if you have a life-limiting illness. Our local hospice program has a palliative care program too that I'm very proud of. So that you can get intervention at any point, even if you're still getting treatment, which is a real value for many people.
Yeah, it is. I'm not sure why people would continue to get treatments if they knew they were terminal.
Well, often you'll find, Gail, very honestly, that I'm probably the least afraid of death person you've ever met. That doesn't mean my hand is up saying, take me this week. Oftentimes when people get a life-limiting illness diagnosis, it may shorten their lifespan, but it shouldn't stop their life.
No.
We should be doing things like, if you want to go see the wild horses, we should be working toward getting you to see the wild horses. If you want to walk your daughter down the aisle, we should be making arrangements for that to happen.
Right.
Your goals should become the thanatologist's goals, and they should be what fits your situation best. Oftentimes people will get an early life-limiting diagnosis. Let's use ALS.
Oh yeah.
Which is a horrifying disorder.
Yeah, I've heard that it's
terrible, but
really unpleasant. Yes.
When you know you have that diagnosis, then the time to make those plans are while you can.
Right.
They're the time to sit down with someone like me and say, absolutely do not let my brother George be at my funeral. But also, absolutely, do ask the choir from my church to sing. Absolutely, Cara, this is not acceptable to me. If I'm going to not have a mind, I'd rather have the pain. Then we use things like hypnotherapy to try to help you broaden out, or guided imagery to help you, Reiki, to help raise your energy levels so that your life is tolerable.
Oh, yeah.
We're not able to extend it but we also don't quicken the process,
Oh, okay.
you know.
Okay.
So that's the
That's
thanatologist
that's
piece.
pretty interesting. Okay, the actual reason that Cara came on today is to talk about essential oils.
And herbs.
And herbs, okay, and herbs. All right, where do you want to start?
Well, let's talk about my tradition first.
Okay.
We'll make this all about me, Gail. I'm a member of what's called the wise woman tradition of herbalist. That means that the symbol for my tradition is the spiral. We don't believe that anybody is here or here. We believe they're somewhere on that wellness spiral.
Oh, okay.
And it may not be at the bottom, and it certainly may not be at the top. But herbs and essential oils help us help ourselves to maintain our wellness. I remind people regularly, we are responsible for our own wellness. As often as I'm given to saying, darn that doctor, or gosh, I wish I could make this doctor understand, it is my responsibility to communicate that. So oftentimes, as the herbalist or the aromatherapist, I often am the person who intercedes with the medical profession
Okay.
because I am a registered nurse.
Right.
And
right.
so I'll intercede and I'll talk about, for example, I have a number of physicians who refer their patients, I don't have patients, they refer their patients to me for a tea I make called Fiona's Fibro Fog, Fiona's Fog Lifter. A lot of complaints with fibromyalgia
Oh,
is, I feel so lost.
really?
A lot of memory kinds of things, and geez, I can't process like I used to process. Fibromyalgia, with its multi-points of pain and discomfort, make every molehill a mountain for people who are
Oh my
suffering.
gosh. Yeah.
I mean, they do. So Fiona's Fibro Lifter, Fog Lifter, is a combination of herbs that allow you to enhance your memory. Rosemary is a common herb used. Allow you to back away. I'm a great user of lavender, both oil and herb, to have folks back away from that breathy anxiety we sometimes feel. I often use catmint in things, and people say, catmint? You're right. That's catnip. That's
Catnip,
exactly what it
yeah,
is.
Is what everybody else knows. It is a member of the mint family,
It is.
though.
And
I do know that all of the members of the mint family have square-shaped stems. You probably wouldn't even notice it unless somebody, an expert, brought it to your attention. But then you get outside where there's some growing, and you're going, "Oh, it is square-shaped."
Yes. Well, and it's a nice safety precaution for people who do their own wild crafting. My days of wild crafting are long over. The ability to get up and down off the ground has left town in my case. So I don't wild craft, but it's nice for me to say to someone who has been out picking fresh mint, are you sure you have mint? Check the stem edge. Because there are a number of things that look suspiciously like mint that really aren't. So
Oregano is a member of the mint
It
family.
is. Oregano is a
remember
mint.
When I first found that out, I remember we have it growing out to our house. It just comes back up every year, and it seems to spread.
Oh, it does.
And I remember my husband, the year that he planted it, I thought I was smelling mint, and I said, "Oh, I see that you planted mint." And he goes, "No, that's oregano." But growing outside,
Right.
it had a minty
Right.
smell to it that nobody would really think of.
Well, and one of the most common things people don't think of in the use of culinary oregano, a little lemon never hurts a thing.
A little lemon.
Lemon or lime oil never hurts a thing when you do it, or a little lemon peel or lime peel.
You mean in your recipes
Right,
for cooking?
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I encourage people to use, and part of my tradition is that we're known for our compassion and our heart earth-centeredness. I always tell people, Gail, in my case, I don't care why it works. I care that it's successful for you.
Right, exactly.
That's my piece of it, totally.
If it works, you know.
And if it doesn't, we'll
use it.
yeah, we'll look to something different. We understand as wise women that illness is part of us. I mean, it's part of growth and self-growth. We don't see ourselves, those of us who are herbalists like me, we don't see ourselves as healers. Even though I'm a Reiki instructor, we see ourselves as facilitating well-being. And that's a big difference. The joke is, I never allow my students to use the word healer.
Oh.
They are but an empty shell through which energy passes, period. And there's no energy exchange in that either. So based on that, we don't think of illness and wellness as polarities. We think of them as part of that spiral.
Part of the journey.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. We think we have to go out and buy. Most of us have kitchens full of, although most of us, let me back up. Most of us should take a look at our herbs in our kitchen for the expiration date and realize that we have things from 10 years ago that are no longer efficacious. And I'm as guilty as anybody else in that, okay?
People don't like to throw things away because they don't like to think they've wasted their money.
And it isn't cheap to have good herbs. I mean, yes, you can go in a million different stores and get 50-cent jars, and they're fine, as long as you're going to use them quickly, so that they don't, because they're usually out of date very quickly. And essential oil is particularly important for that. So when I talk about the common kitchen herbs, don't just think in terms of herbs, think also in terms of the oils, because I have many of the same oils in my shop. I make chakra-specific oils in my shop. I do all my tea blends myself, too. And I'm the world's futziest soul. If you don't have a tea ball...
I have a couple.
Good. But if you don't, stop by and see me. I'm happy to give you one.
Is your shop in
Lilydale on North Street. I'm one of these people who don't want you to drink tea from a bag.
Oh, okay.
I remind people all the time those bags are white. They're white because they're bleached. And so now you're steeping your tea
in bleach.
So I give like crazy. I'm a crazy giveaway person for tea bags, balls, because I don't want you to use. I use and give away silicone ones, but they're BPA free.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of people will only use metal. That's okay with me.
Yeah, you can. The ones that I have are stainless steel.
And that's fine. I just find, because I give away funny looking things like fish on a pole and berries and things that come apart, a pear, and then you put your loose tea in it, snap it back together, and steep it for 15 or 20 minutes. And I like the fun stuff because I feel more of a hope that you'll use it.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
But so talking just about some common kitchen things. Basil. Basil is number one on my list.
Okay, what is the reason for that?
It is antiviral, anti-inflammatory, and it's a potent anti-inflammatory. Digestive tract, nerve, urinary tract, and joints anti-inflammatory. Now that's pretty broad. I always will say to you, and I'm very upfront about this, I do not treat children or pregnant women.
Oh, okay.
There are special requirements for both, and because I don't live at your house, I can't know for sure what's happening. So I limit to what I have a fair idea about.
Okay.
As a common cold reliever, now I'm a big fan of a product that will go unnamed, but is a homeopathic, you can buy in any drugstore.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but I'm a bigger fan of basil tea.
Basil tea for colds.
Yes.
Okay.
Teaspoon and a half of basil in your steeping bowl, 20 minutes steeping. Drink it like medicine. Another thing that I ask you not to do is sweeten. If you really have to sweeten, a couple drips of honey is fine. But most of these, particularly when I make combination teas, I use things that they're not undrinkable. I'm a tea drinker, so I use things that aren't undrinkable.
Sure. Yeah, I never ever drink coffee.
Me either.
And I don't drink the kind of tea that has caffeine in it either, because I'm a caffeine sensitive person. So I just drink herbal teas, and I usually do not put a sweetener in unless maybe I have a sore throat. And then it would be like some raw honey, with some freshly squeezed lemon juice.
When I use dandelion in a mixture of teas, unless you're someone who is herbal tea familiar, dandelion can be a bit much.
Taste-wise, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It can be a bit harsh. So then I will say, if you really do have to sweeten this, but I generally will combine dandelion with a mint, which will then help cut the dandelion-y piece of it.
And dandelion is one of the blood purifiers,
Yes,
too.
it is. But that's not one of my common kitchen herbs.
No, probably not.
Basil, too. Please don't forget basil. We often think of basil when we make pesto. Because pesto,
yeah.
But don't forget it in your other culinary things. Again, remember that potent anti-inflammatory. If you're an aches and pains person, and many of us, just by virtue of falling apart, are, and that can be such a refresher. The minute I think I have a cold, I might only think I'm getting it. Sometimes I will even make it double strength, which is a little harder to drink, but...
Yeah, if you do something like that, I've noticed at the very first sign of a cold, you won't, the symptoms won't increase to their full strength.
Or last as long.
Right.
Or last as long. Now again, another common home thing that we never think about, black pepper.
Oh, yes. Yes, I have heard of that. I have heard in recent years about black pepper and ginger and turmeric taken together for cancer patients.
I also have had a number of folks who have cancer diagnoses who get frankincense and myrrh oil from me.
Yes, I was going to bring that up. Now, I found out that frankincense, unfortunately, after a dog of ours died of cancer, I did not know it until several months after he passed away, that frankincense shrinks cancerous tumors. And I have a friend who has done natural therapies for herself for breast cancer, and it shrunk the part that was in her armpit went completely away as a result of the frankincense. And then the myrrh, and maybe some of you at home have probably already figured out that these are two of the gifts that the wise men brought to Jesus, and there's a reason they were considered that valuable. And then a cat that I have was diagnosed with gingivitis and a year or so ago, and the veterinarian kind of would have liked to pull all his teeth out. And I decided to check in with a couple of books that were written by holistic veterinarians. And I wind up finding out that myrrh is effective against gingivitis. And actually, the Tom's of Maine brand toothpaste people, they
Yep.
have a propolis and myrrh
Right?
toothpaste variety. So yes, and I'm going to let you say what you have to say about it, but I wish we had known about frankincense for cancer before our dog died. You know, we might
Sure.
have saved him, you know.
I teach a course, let's say, I didn't teach it this summer in Lilydale, I taught it last summer, on healing herbs for pets, both cats and dogs. And those that, of course, are counterindicated for pets, period. But, and in that class, I teach quite a lot about that kind of thing, what can be helpful, what, you know, how it can be helpful. Black pepper, antimicrobial, diuretic. If I notice my feet are looking a little puffy around the edges, I may increase my black pepper use for a day or two. People think about, and it's also a great way to cut your sodium use.
Oh, yeah.
For your hand table sodium use.
Right.
Somehow, at least for me, if I black pepper first and I taste it, it has all kinds of taste.
It does. It
Yes.
really does. At one point in time, I remember hearing reports that black pepper was bad for your health, and then you know, so I got to where I didn't use it, but then I wound up finding out that it actually helps with cancer. So I've gone back to using it now.
And honestly, Gail, I can, for every positive, I can find a negative for you if, you know, if we need to do that. But mostly I suggest to people, you know, give this 2 weeks. 21 days is my favorite thing because 21 days makes a habit. Give it that amount of time. If it hasn't been effective for you, don't do it. And if it has, don't double it. Some people tend to see things as if this little bit is good, this little bit is better. When
Not necessarily.
No, yes,
no.
no.
Less is more.
You really. Another common one that you have in your house is cinnamon.
Oh, yes. Everybody, pretty much everybody loves cinnamon, don't they?
The only caution about cinnamon
Is don't eat a spoonful of it.
well, if you're taking an anticoagulant,
Oh, a blood thinner?
yes,
Uh-huh.
you should be careful in your cinnamon use because
Oh, is that right?
cinnamon
is
is
a
an
blood
anti.
thinner?
Yes.
Yeah. I didn't know that. I know a lot. One thing that a lot of us eat now is ground up flaxseed. That's a blood thinner too.
Yes, but most of us can use that initial bit of blood thinning,
With the cinnamon.
or with the flaxseed, either one. Because let's face it, Gail, now your diet as a vegetarian or a vegan is certainly much healthier than mine is as a keto person. But I look at that, and I think it's like there used to be a physician in Fredonia, and he was an elderly man who lived beside WCA home.
Oh.
And he was a lovely older man. And he did our physicals and took care of many of the ladies at WCA, etc. But he used to say, if only you all understood, there is nothing bad for you in moderation.
Well, that's what he said. I don't know that I agree with it.
I used to tease him about, so if I moderately walk out into the middle of Temple Street,
If you moderately walk into
the center of Temple Street,
Temple Street.
I don't think that's going to be good for my health, particularly not at a class change time. I'm going to be run down in the street.
By a car.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So, I mean, there are always points of dissension about that. And I would say to you, Gail, by the way, he used to say this as a cigarette smoke curled up from his desk drawer. So I took it with the lighthearted love that he gave it. Another really good cinnamon thing, if you have intestinal gas that you just, and sometimes that happens to us dietarily, excuse me, sometimes that happens to us either based on what we're eating. Some prescription medications cause a great deal of intestinal distress. A little bit of cinnamon can be very helpful to settle that. What I will do in that case for myself, if I'm nauseous or have some vomiting, I will make peppermint or spearmint tea, and I'll add a half teaspoon of cinnamon. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like a treat, actually, but it also helps settle out all that kind of thing in the stomach.
Right.
I know elderberry is not a common household thing, but I always like to bring it up because dried elderberry is my star. Now, I don't in Lilydale make tinctures because Lilydale is an alcohol-free place.
Oh, because alcohol is
It's a
used
tincture.
in making
Right.
tinctures, yes.
But I do make syrups. I do make that kind of thing. There is an enzyme in dried elderberries that fights type A and B flu virus, which are the two most common flu viruses. It penetrates the cell membrane and doesn't allow the virus to take hold. So, I keep some dried elderberry hanging around just because. Mm-hmm. If it gets kind of to the end of what I consider shelf life, which is less than a year, I will stew it and make a syrup from it or make a decoction from it.
Oh, yeah.
Garlic.
Oh, yes.
I can't cook without garlic and onion. You should know. I can't cook anyway.
My husband grows it in the garden.
How fabulous.
Yes.
And do you use the scapes?
We use the scapes.
We make our own garlic powder from the scapes. We dry it and make it that way. But
you grind it up into a powder.
Garlic is antimicrobial. Hates those little microbes. It's anti-inflammatory, and it is a great immune booster. Mm-hmm. Garlic has B6, has C, has zinc. You can use garlic with ginger to shorten your cold. And again, I remind people that medicinally, you're probably using it 4 to 6 times a day with a cup of tea. Mm-hmm. Everybody laughs when I say this, but for young people who are affected with acne, if you cut a garlic clove and rub it on the acne, it will stop it.
Another thing that will clear up pimples really fast is fresh lemon juice will clear up pimples too. Mm-hmm.
Well, and we don't think of lemon, but that's my very next thing. We don't think of citrus peel or lemon, lime, orange, grapefruit peel. We don't think of those as medicinal, but all of them are. Now, you can with orange, lemon, any of those. Keep in mind too, they're also an expectorant. So if you're having trouble coughing and having it be productive, then the easier thing to do with that is to make a half and half, honey, lemon, blend to drink. Or if now I'm not big on drinking lemon, but I will make instead a concentrated tablespoon and just tell myself hush and swallow because I know it's so valuable. It's also a carminative, which helps keep the stomach settled. I may just be whistling up a stump here, but in today's society, I see so many people who have so many stomach upsets, whether they are, again, dietarily based, whether they are stress-related, whether they are... The cause isn't the issue in this case. The cause is treating the immediate upset. And then maybe taking a good hard look at
your diet.
Yes.
Yeah.
and at the kinds of activities you're doing in addition to that. One of my other favorites is parsley.
Oh, yes,
I
parsley.
always have said for years, who put that green stuff on my plate? But that green stuff on my plate is a nutritive.
A lot of people don't eat that. It'll be used as garnish in a restaurant, and people take it off and set it aside,
Put it aside.
and then just eat, and that's the best part of the meal.
Absolutely. It has A, B, C, and calcium. It fights allergies. It's an anti-inflammatory. It tends to lessen joint swelling. It's a nutritive, and of course, again, in my wise woman tradition, we look toward the nutritives. I'm very likely, if you're not feeling well and you call me, I'm very likely to show up with soup, because I can hide any number of good for you things in soup.
In the soup, yeah.
Right. And so that's very helpful for people. Now, there is a caution with lemon and orange and grapefruit, and if you have a citrus insensitivity.
Oh, some people actually do?
Really. I mean, it can be ghastly for them. It can
Oh, really?
Actually, yeah.
I didn't know that.
When I find out that someone rarely ever eats citrus, I'll ask why.
Mm-hmm.
And
And they'll quite often tell you that.
that it burns, or it causes upset, or it makes them uncomfortable. It acts almost with a laxative effect. And so for those folks, as a carminative, again, I'm a big fan of mint, because the lemon, or the parsley, I'm sorry, is just, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going between the two of them. The citrus, for some people, is just not possible. They're just not able to stay, and that seems like a shame to me, because
Yeah, I had never heard that
you miss
before.
some really
Yeah.
big.
Well, I imagine that's probably true. I'm just not one of them.
Yeah, me either, me
you know.
either.
So I was going to mention that a favorite herb of mine, really, there is just something about the taste that I feel I can't live without it, is phooey.
That's
It's
okay.
not popping into my head. You know, I think it's related to parsley. It is. Oh, that's it. Yes, cilantro. Cilantro. And I don't know why, but when you use grind up the seeds, they call it
Human.
coriander.
Yep.
Yeah, coriander. It's two different names depending on whether you
What
use
part
the
you're
leaves
using.
or the seeds.
Right.
But that is a big favorite of mine. I love the taste. Now I've heard that some people can't stand it. You?
Me.
Really?
I don't do coriander or cilantro. It's the taste.
Really?
Yes, it's the taste.
Isn't that strange that two different people, it tastes totally different to two
I find it
different people?
bitey, and
Well, you know, one thing I've noticed is I do think that our taste buds change when we go through menopause.
absolutely.
Because this is what I experienced was I used to like to have hot peppers in in recipes, because I believed it was really good for me and everything. But as soon as I started going through perimenopause, it was like it felt 10 times hotter in my mouth, and the taste was different. And so now I can only put mild amounts of that stuff in, just enough to make it just a tiny bit spicy.
And I'm the queen of not spicy at all.
Are you?
Yes, I am. I have my favorites, but those two are not it. I'm back to parsley, because parsley is
Parsley.
just, yes. When you eat that little garnish that's on your plate, you have taken in as much A, B, and C as you would from an orange.
Without having to eat
Eat the
orange if you
orange.
have a
If you're
citrus
sensitive, yes.
sensitivity.
And some people I found too with citrus can't take the mouth feel.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Generally, when they tell me that, I'll ask, have you seen your dentist lately? because it suggests to me that there's exposed nerves or there's something else going on there that is way beyond the herbalist's ability to work with.
Yeah.
My one very, very favorite is rosemary.
Rosemary.
We call it the dew of the sea. It is a bitter that is anti-everything. Okay? It boosts memory. It speeds healing of bruises and wounds. I will often, if I have an open area, make a rosemary paste. It lifts the spirit and it eases headaches. I have lots of folks who have, I make a tea called Herself's Headache Helper, and they'll use that, but they will also use a little inhalation of rosemary and steam, and that will help ease their headache.
Just regular headaches or the ones caused by sinus congestion?
Well, now the ones with sinus congestion, I like you to use a little bit more complex steam than just rosemary, but I would put rosemary in it. I also probably would put some citrus in for inhalation. There are a number of, again, I don't like eucalyptus, so I don't use it.
Oh, okay.
But there are a number of good recipes that are inhalative that
call for eucalyptus.
Call for eucalyptus. And people tell me they get great results with it.
Hmm.
You know, which, so I don't want to argue with that.
No.
You know, sage. We think of sage only at Thanksgiving to put in stuffing. I am.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm the last person who would recommend that.
To put it in
Stuffing,
Thanksgiving dinner?
Yeah, I'm not. I prefer my sage on the spoon in the tea.
Oh, okay.
Okay. It's an antioxidant, antimicrobial, antispasmodic. It's an astringent, anti-inflammatory. It aids digestion. It helps relieve nervousness and fatigue. It helps relieve congestion, colds and flu. I would put sage in a snifter, what I call a snifter, an inhalation. While many of us know all about several herbs like black cohosh, if we're menopausal or perimenopausal.
Or Vitex berries?
Yeah, Vitex berries possibly, but I'm not really a fan of black cohosh because there's not, while we've used it for centuries, there's not scientific long proof about what happens after that.
Mm-hmm. I don't think I've ever had it.
Many women have used it. I'm a big fan of use some sage tea.
Sage tea.
Yeah. Use some sage tea. We know what sage does. We know the long-term effects of sage. I always kid about it. I suppose it's odd for a registered nurse to be an herbalist, but I want to know that this is effective without long-term effects. Mm-hmm. So that's that's the science piece of me. And my very last one is one you already mentioned. Thyme. Not cilantro. No cilantro. Thyme. Antimicrobial. It's an astringent. It's an expectorant. Good in an inhalation. Source of A, C, and fiber. Often people are unaware that a really good deodorant and mouthwash
is thyme.
Yeah.
Well, parsley's supposed to.
Parsley's a great mouthwash.
For breath and like that too. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep, it is. Now, one of the things I always like to say to people, I encourage home use of herbs all the time and oils. And I would say this to you about the essential oils. I don't know a bad company out there, Gail. Okay,
oh,
they're
is
all
that
good.
right? They're all good. Okay.
It depends on your financial status.
Yeah, I've heard that some of them are very expensive.
They are, and some of them carry no caution. For example, the folks who shop in my shop know they cannot put essential oil on their skin directly. It has to be in a carrier oil. Now, I supply it that way because it's so important to me.
Okay. So why would you not put an essential oil directly on your skin?
It can be very burning to your skin.
It can burn?
It can be harmful. Many people who are fine using an essential oil, if they put it in an essential oil pendulum, or they put it in a diffuser, and in the pendulum they're okay, but when they put it directly on their skin, they're too sensitive. It's just not.
Well, you know, I had a weird experience one time several years, quite a few years ago actually, in a yoga class. It was one evening where the instructor was having us just do what she called restorative poses. It's like a yoga pose that you can stay in for a little while longer, you know, not just come out of 30 seconds or a minute later. And when we'd be laying down in one of these poses, she wanted us to have the eye pillows on our eyes, and most of the ones she had were filled with flaxseed, but a few of them had lavender blossoms in them. And I had not used one of the ones with lavender blossoms before, and she had me use one of those that night, and before class time was over with, I noticed a sensation of heat around my eyes. And by the time I got home that night, I was all achy through my sinuses and the top of my head. And in the morning, my face and neck were all turning red when I got up in the morning, so I had to start taking some Benadryl because
to head it off.
What it turned out was I had had an allergic reaction to those lavender blossoms. So ever since then, I've shied away from like cosmetics or anything that contained lavender. So,
and that's a wise approach. I will often make, when people tell me they're having difficulty sleeping, I will make a lavender pillow for inside their pillowcase.
Right.
A little tiny one. But again, lavender is another one of those herbs that if a little is good, more is not better.
Is probably too much.
Right,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
And often people will use herbal pillows that they heat.
Yeah, I think I've heard about that
well,
stuff, and that's even worse.
I think that you're inviting disaster when you
what
put it in the microwave and heat it, and then you put it on you.
It changes the DNA of it, probably, doesn't
Well,
it?
that and what you're getting is benefit of heat. So you could just as easily wet a washcloth, put it in the microwave if you must. I personally prefer to turn on the hot water tap and wet my washcloth there, and then put it right here so that I get the decongestive value, but I don't get hit with any of the rest of it.
Right.
Again, I'm kind of old-fashioned in that I believe you use what you know best, and if you know it works for you, I'm good. You know, I make a pain reliever called Patty's Pain Reliever, but I ask everybody I sell it to, do you take aspirin? And if they do, I won't sell them Patty's. They have to use herself, because Patty's has willow bark in it.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's the kind of thing that I like to say a knowledgeable herbalist will be aware of, that you still need to take a little history from people. You need to talk about their likes and their dislikes, because, you know, I might look up cilantro to find something that would be really helpful for you. Now, I'd never think about that for me. But those kind of things we learn from our people who support us. We do.
Well, the thing that I was told about cilantro is that it has a chelating effect where when you eat it, it grabs onto toxins in your body and pulls them out.
Right. Someone told me once, now I don't know how true this is, but there was a physician in the Northern County area who was doing chelation. And the solution was time-based.
Was it?
Yeah, and I thought that was really interesting. I never got to visit and ask, but I always like to remind people when you're doing herbal things at home, please don't use copper, aluminum, or Teflon coated pans or utensils.
Teflon, aluminum, or copper?
No.
Okay.
All give off their own set of biodynamics, which you don't need with the herb. I'm a firm believer, love these kind of cups, because these kind of cups allow you to steep in the cup and not be worried about, some things are color coordinated, so you can't dare do anything with them because it's going to come off. When I talk about infusions, I'm talking about you using the delicate part of the flowers and the plants. You drink it, you put one herb in, you put 4 herbs in if that's what you want to use. If you buy tea from me, you know they always have at least 3. I'm looking for the blend of herbs to be greater than the whole to be greater than the sum of its parts. Okay. Drinkable infusion, you use a cup, 8 ounces. Now, in this size cup, this is a 12-ounce cup. So I would use 1.5 teaspoons of the tea mixture. And I like my tea robust, so I steep for 20 minutes. I suggest folks steep for at least 15. Otherwise, you're really missing out on a lot of it. And of course, you can add a little lemon if that's what you need to do. Honey, if you absolutely have to. Honey is good for you. I don't know why I'm so funky about that, but I am, just because I think it tends to continue us to gravitate toward the sweet, which really is not healing for any of us.
It tends to make you want to eat other sweets.
And more, and where most of us are so sugar baited now that, it's really. So then an inhalation is something you breathe in. And I tell people you don't have to have fancy stuff. Use a pot, quart of boiling water, 3 sprigs of the herb, and if you can't use the herb, sprigs actually, although inhalations are generally based on the tougher parts.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, because you're not going to drink it. You're going to put a towel over your head, put your face over the bowl or the pot, and you're going to inhale. And I remind people this is one of those times when inhaling means your belly goes out. Because I want you to inhale deeply.
Right.
And let it go back out. A decoction. Now, my dried berries that I make syrup from, I do a decoction with them. They need more time. Someone was telling me they use willow bark and decoct it. Well, I don't. I use willow bark as an ingredient in tea. But they're using sticks of willow, and I suppose it would work. I just don't see necessarily the point in using a willow bark inhalant or decoction.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm lazy. Why wouldn't we do it the easy way? When you decoct, though, you need to let it simmer for 20 to 45 minutes. And again, if you have children at home, decoction is not my most popular thing because you can't trust children for a minute. They're busy, they're active. Those purple berries look so good. So I encourage that people with particularly small children don't use decoctions either. Syrup is one of my favorite things. Again, because in Lilydale I don't make tinctures. 1 ounce of herbs to 4 cups of water. You decoct it until it's down to 1/4 of its original volume, until you have about a cup. And then you strain it, and you add vinegar and honey to make the syrup. And you do that to taste. I don't like syrups cloyingly sweet, so I probably vinegar mine for myself a little more than I would for somebody else. And a vinegar reduction, I always laugh when I see people buying flavored vinegars.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
A vinegar reduction is probably the simplest thing in the world to make. It's a quarter or a half a cup of herbs to 3 cups of vinegar. You simmer it till you've got it reduced in half. You strain it and you add honey to taste. When you're buying the expensive reductions you may see in stores, etc., it really is very simple to do it this way. And then my very, very favorite one is soup. Soup. I love to bring soup. If I know someone is vegetarian, I bring it made with vegetable broth. I also use seafood broth, chicken, beef, bone broth. When my late husband Philip was ill for over 9 years, and most of it was without a great appetite, but he could do soup with no problem.
Oh, sure.
So often if you get soup from me, you'll find Master Parade canali beans, navy beans, white beans, pintos. I want to get everything into you nutritively that I can. So dark green vegetables. You're amazed at how well broccoli, spinach, asparagus, cabbage blend down. Any other vegetables, if you're a meat eater or a poultry eater, that can be put in as well. I love to use mushrooms in soup because they add body. And I also, of course, you'll find all kinds of herbs floating around in my soups because I won't want to address your issues.
Why is willow bark important?
I think it's the world's greatest pain reliever. Willow bark is, in fact, Salix alba, which is what aspirin is made from. It is, I have a couple of folks who have arthritis diagnoses who don't take aspirin. And based on their physical size, I will make a brew. As someone who weighs 100 pounds, obviously, I'm not going to make the same brew I'm going to make for a man who weighs 225. Willow bark is a calmative, it's a nervine, it's a anti-inflammatory, it's one of the most reliable, with least side effects, pain reliever you can find. At one time I was having dental issues, and at that point I was chewing willow bark.
You were chewing right on the bark.
Yes, on purpose, because it brought almost instant pain relief.
Wow.
Almost instant.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I have a friend who also sells from my shop who makes something called Magic Muscle Rub. Now, I don't know her recipe because she wouldn't share it.
Oh.
But it's a balm. It's a soothing. People are amazed. They come in and she always leaves a sample, and they come in and try it, and they're like, and the best thing about her solution or her balm is that it has no mentholatum in it, so you can use it with heat. And that's really a good thing for people.
Yeah. I'm wondering if it has arnica in it.
I believe it does, and I think it might also have some calendula.
Yeah, because I know arnica is really good for pain.
It is. And arnica, the only caution about arnica, and then as I say this to you, Gail, let me tell you, I did exactly the opposite. But the only caution about arnica is you shouldn't use it on an open area.
Oh, an open wound.
Right,
Yeah.
but I have to tell you, I have several times used it on just a little teeny skin abrasion that had openings and been just fine. I think arnica is one of those magical things. It just isn't something most of us have in our kitchen.
Right, right.
Some other common, I had said to you earlier, cold symptom relief. 1 tablespoon of powdered cinnamon, 2 cloves. Brewed together as a tea, will quiet a cough. And then I often, if there's a sore throat, will suggest a little honey too. But will quiet a cough and open up stuffed airways. When I walk into a pharmacy and see all these OTC cold remedies, I want to just sweep them off the shelf and say, look, here you have this homeopathic, and here you have that homeopathic, and the rest of this is just drying people out. There's not an advantage to dehydrating people, particularly if they're having trouble with a non-productive cough. Why would you dehydrate them, you know? So yeah, I like the easiest kind of things. Another favorite inhalation of mine is 3 sprigs of thyme into the pot over my head with the towel. Breathe in deep, breathe in deep. One of the things I think we tend to do, at least I found this in patients, is when we're congested, instead of breathing deep, which of course promotes coughing, etc., we tend to go so that we're really not aerating anything and we're not helping ourselves be rid of it. A friend of mine went to the doctor once and said to me, "Can you imagine I'm coughing and hacking and he gave me an expectorant?" I said, "And you find that unusual?" And she said, "Well, an expectorant, I don't want to spit on top of it." I said, "But you do. You do want to, you know, and that's why he gave it to you." And so that's kind of the thing for people who, you know, none of us like to be walking around coughing and hacking and carrying on. But if you take action when it starts, you don't have to be, you know. Upset stomach. I love a tisane of chamomile, spearmint, or peppermint. Now, I don't do it during the day if I have, because of the chamomile. Chamomile tends to just moderate me right out. And so I will make a cup before bed if I have an upset stomach. I'm not a believer for myself in the traditional over-the-counter remedies. I find, number one, they go against the grain of who I am, but secondly, I find them not as reliable as herbals. Herbal, I know the expectation of. I understand what comes next. I don't have to put 4 paragraphs of warning symbols, you know. Bites and itchies. Lord knows Lilydale has the queen of all mosquitoes. I mean, they are big. They could carry you off to the lake. Apple cider vinegar in a spray bottle. Spray it on. Great itch reliever. Great itch reliever for poison ivy. Keep your hands off of it and spray it on. Bug bites, like flea bites. That happens to a lot of people, particularly in nice weather, particularly who are outdoors people. Spray some apple cider vinegar on. The other quick trick, if you don't have apple cider vinegar, use raw honey and dab it on.
Oh yeah, you can, honey is really good on things like athlete's foot, burns.
It's very healing. Unfortunately, we've gotten away from the old wives' tale of put butter on a burn. That isn't effective. It's not helpful for healing. A little honey on the burn might be just fine.
Yes, yes, it is.
Hand scrub. Now, I should have done this before I came today, since I was doing fiber work.
Yeah.
50% olive oil, 50% sugar. It's the only time I recommend sugar. And you make it into a paste, and it will clean anything off your hands, anything.
Right.
And I should have done it this morning. And then I got to share with you my favorite get up and go tea. Now again, this is not for people who are citrus sensitive. A half a grapefruit, a lemon, and an orange in a 3-quart pot with 2.5 cups of water. Bring it to a rolling boil, simmer 5 minutes, strain it, and add 3 teaspoons of honey. It is an excellent get it moving tea when I'm in my least getting moving state.
Well, I hate to say it.
Are we at the end?
This has been a really fun conversation, but we've come to the end of another episode of Fresh Perspectives, and I want to thank you so much for coming on.
I was delighted. It was great fun, Gail.
It was a lot of fun, and I will see the rest of you guys in a couple weeks on the next episode.
All right, and I'll watch on TV.
Good.